I am your host, Jason Miles, and this is Revolution Podcast. This episode is, as you know, this is dropping on a wonderful Wednesday morning, Tuesday for the patrons. If you'd like to get it a day early and also be privy to all the bonus Patreon content, www.patreon.com/BitterLakePresents. Wherever you're listening to the show, there are links in the description. Just click it, become a patron, get all the bonus content, all the special stuff that we offer, besides getting the audio only a day early. But this is a show that sadly I wasn't able to participate on, as I had made plans to go north where I am from, go back home to see some family. I wasn't able to see my kids on Christmas, well, the older kids, as they came down with COVID. So while driving to the Bay Area, I was trying to call into the show on my phone, and reception was just too horrible, and couldn't do it. So you might hear me jump in and out every so often. I think I got to ask like half of a question. But our guest, Jacqueline Luqman, who has been a mainstay in left political discourse for years now, kind of got her political education, if you will, or her political awakening in the punk scene. And one of the comments on the screen as I was trying to drive and watch at the same time was, man, this would be a different show if Jason was here. Because there's definitely something that I'm trying to interrogate and using punk music for that. If you haven't watched it, it is on the YouTubes. YouTube.com/This is Revolution Podcast. Help us out. We're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers. I feel like we're close. We're almost at 8,000. But the latest video essay, Death of a Revolution, talks about the cultures of deconstruction and authenticity. And I use hardcore music to describe it. That's actually the scene that Jackie comes from in the D.C. area. One of my favorite bands. Very influential for me and what I do. Bad Brains, of course, is from D.C. So I would have loved to ask some questions about what that scene looks like after 84, like 84 through 86. Like, what does that scene look like? But sadly, I was not able to ask that question. So hopefully, Jackie back on, and we can ask those questions. But here is the Saturday crew, minus me. The Pascal Robert, Marcus of the Left Flank Vets. If you ever want to hear Marcus' show, there's links in the description to the Left Flank Vets. Also, get ready for that sports show Marcus and Mac are doing. It's coming soon. That music means I've been talking too long, and I am out.
Good afternoon and welcome to This is a Revolution. I am your current host, Pascal Robert. Our normal host, Jason Miles, is in transit, and we are currently going to have a very interesting show today. This is, of course, as those of you may not know, Martin Luther King's birthday. So shout out to those who are going to be enjoying the holiday. We have an interesting show today with an interesting guest. But before we bring on our guest, let us bring on the one and only Normal Saturday crew co-host, Marcus from the Left Flank Vets.
What's up? What's up? How's it going, Pascal? The stream feels a little naked without all the bells and whistles and cheering and gunshots and
I know. No, Jason is the one that has the what does he call his little arsenal of soundboard? Soundboard, yes. Yeah. Jason has the soundboard with the applause and the bells and whistles. But that's okay because we have done shows without the soundboard and Jason that have been moderately successful, though we miss Jason very much. He is the captain of the ship here at This is Revolution. But since
I do want to say we got to have a warning out because there's another snowstorm coming to Virginia, and it crushed Raytheon Acres last week, or that was 2 weeks ago. We got another one coming up, so let's hope you hear from me because they don't know how to handle it.
You might be buried under snow in the near future?
Yeah. They get snow on Sunday, and it closes everything down until Friday.
Oh, okay. Well, be safe and secure. And also, you lived in Maine for years, dude. Snow in the DMV must be like nothing but rainwater for you.
I mean, like for me, I'm wondering like why things happen this way. Like, why does everything have to shut down in this manner when like it's like 6 inches of snow? It's no big deal.
Well, anyway, enough of the chatter and the babble. Yes. Let us introduce our wonderful guest who I'm very, very, very thrilled to have today. Today we have the amazing Jacqueline Luqman, who is the co-host of By Any Means Necessary on Radio Sputnik, a daily show that analyzes current political and social events through an anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, radical Black internationalist tradition and lens. She is also a contributor to the Real News Network, editor-in-chief of the social media program Coffee, Current Events and Politics in Luqman Nation, and a contributor to Black Power Media. She has more than 20 years of activism in Washington, D.C., focusing on participating in and supporting community-level issues, as well as regional and national, that impact working-class, poor, and oppressed people in the U.S. and abroad. She is a member of Black Alliance for Peace, as am I, and Pan-African Community Action, and is a supporter of several other grassroots radical Black-focused and led organizations, and is an active member of the Board of Social Action in Plymouth Congregational United Church of Christ, a progressive church in Washington, D.C. Please give This is Revolution applause to Jacqueline Luqman, who someone who I have admired for many years.
What up, revolutionaries? Happy Saturday. Happy MLK Day. And not a day off, doggone it, for Monday.
There you go. Jacqueline, I'm so glad you were able to join us today after you had been gracious enough to invite me on your Radio Sputnik show By Any Means Necessary a couple of times, and also on Black Power Media. But one of the things that I don't think people really know about you enough is that you are kind of a veteran in progressive left media spaces. Now, I use the term progressive intentionally, right? Mm-hmm. Because contrary to the concept that people have that somehow the left only became alive because of Occupy and Bernie Sanders, you and I, because of the comrades that we have in Black Alliance for Peace and on the Black left and other parts of the radical left, know that there have been people dedicated to socialism, anti-capitalism, and imperialism on the left, particularly in the Black and Brown community, for many years, going back even not only to the 60s with the Black Power era, but even before that. And we have many of I know my mentors, and I mean some of yours, who come out of that period and have consistently been fighting the righteous fight in this period of what we call at This Is Revolution, the 50-year counter-revolution, which basically is the period from the rise of Nixon up until today, where basically all of American politics has been a counter-revolution against the new left of the 60s.
Right.
And when I say that you are a veteran in the progressive spaces, I'm really talking about the kind of post-Occupy, post-Bernie media environment where all of these new younger folk realizes that capitalism wasn't working for them. And what I want you to talk about, as not only as a woman, but as a Black woman, is what exactly was it like in those early periods of time when people were just kind of feeling their development in this politics, being a media personality, and what were some of the trials and tribulations and travails that you had to deal with and overcome in those spaces?
Right off the top, Pascal. Oh my God!
If you don't watch the show enough, I don't. There's no warm and fuzzy. We don't do warm and fuzzy when it comes to me.
Well, first, I want to say that I think kind of dove into political awareness in the punk scene right after high school. In 1985 here in Washington, D.C. The punk scene was very large and influential and extremely political, because that was during the Reagan administration. And, there were all these great protests that happened focusing on social issues. And I was a punk. I was involved in those protests. So I got like this early-ish kind of exposure to direct action, I guess I would say, through being a punk, through the kind of music that I loved. And it was because I was, dating a guy who was a guitar player in a punk band here in DC that I was exposed to all of this. But I've never been I've never fit in. I've never been like the go along to get along kind of person. I've always been interested in politics. Even in high school, I watched C-SPAN and PBS rather than, the popular TV shows. And my mom was very worried about me, but she was the one who would sit there and talk local politics with me on Friday night. So this is all pretty much her fault. But when the Sanders, so you have to understand, interest in and involvement in politics and kind of seeing how politics literally shaped the lives of people around me. I grew up during the crack era. So I grew up in a part of the city that it was great to be a kid over here in Southeast DC. It was so much fun. We had so much fun as kids. There were concerts. There were all of these wonderful memories that I have growing up in Southeast DC, not knowing that we were poor, right? Because everybody around us was in the same situation and nobody made a big deal of it. And all of a sudden crack happened and everything changed in our neighborhood. All of a sudden we had homeless people. We never had homeless people before. All of a sudden, the store started closing. All of these things happened. All of a sudden, there were more cops in our neighborhood, and they were not nice. And then people started to be killed. And that's when I think I started to realize that government plays a role in the everyday lives of people. And I didn't understand how, with those particular policies at the time, but I heard the rumblings from the old heads in my neighborhood who were already saying the CIA did this. And, me not really being clear about my politics then in high school, I'm like, that's ridiculous. The CIA would never do something like that. And then, of course, as I get older, I realized, yes, they did. The CIA was absolutely involved in flooding our neighborhoods with crack, and the US government sacrificed our people so that they could fund a war against the Contras, fund the Contra War. So against the Sandinistas, the leftist government in Nicaragua. So that's how I grew up. I grew up with a legacy of the Black Panther Party. I grew up with a legacy of people who were involved in those movements. So I become a punk. I'm in the Rock Against Racism protests that a lot of DC bands had. I'm participating in the Winter of Resistance protest on the White House lawn. That there was a big concert, but it was a big protest. I'm doing that, and then a couple of years later, this person, Bernie Sanders, pops up. There's a lot in between there, but I'm, trying to distill things, condense things rather. So I've always been political. I've always been curious about politics and how politics really do affect people's lives, especially the people I live around. So the more I learned, the angrier I got. And then, Bernie Sanders comes along. Barack Obama's presidency happens, and I'm looking at it, I think, with the same kind of hope that maybe he'll be different, right? But as I look at the way he's campaigning and the things that he does, like in New Jersey and in New York, where he's in front of Black audiences and he's wagging the finger at Black people, just like a white politician would do, but he gets in front of white audiences and he talks about policy. I'm like, yeah, maybe, but I'm thinking I'm hopeful because I'm young and I'm stupid, I'm hopeful, and I'm thinking maybe he's going to get in there and something is going to change. And of course, we see how that happens. So I think I held out my hope for Barack Obama maybe 3 years into his first administration. And the fourth year, I was like, nah, fuck this. He's just like everybody else. As matter of fact, he's worse because he is the black face of neoliberalism and imperialism and white supremacy, and he's happy to play that role and be the bulwark for respectability for Black voters. That's the role he wanted to play. So along comes Bernie Sanders, and I can't say that at that time I was staunchly a socialist communist, but I knew that capitalism won it. I figured out by then that capitalism wasn't it, and probably socialism was going to be the only answer. I'm not sure that I was fully, Thomas Sankara, Amilcar Cabral, socialist, but I was getting there. I was like a half a step, because I was reading all of those people. I was learning about the history of all of the world leaders, usually African leaders from developing nations, former colonies that fought their colonizers, kicked their colonizers out of their countries, and were choosing socialism to develop their countries. And I was learning the deep history of how the United States and its Western allies never let that happen. So how the United States and the CIA literally murdered lots of people in order for socialism not to develop in these countries that were former colonies. So Bernie Sanders comes along and he's got this nice idea of democratic socialism. And it's like, okay, I mean, he keeps talking about Denmark and Sweden, and all right, I get that people have to get to this socialism thing in increments, and I guess that people are not gonna, go full on, Sankara and Cabral and Fanon. They're not gonna go into the deep end of the ocean. They're sure not gonna go into the black end of the socialist ocean just yet. So okay, I'll give Bernie Sanders his due for bringing a new generation of folks over to some type of socialism that's at least away from capitalism. So my husband and I were involved in an online outlet called, I hate to say their name so much, but an online outlet called Real Progressives that we quite literally helped grow. It was practically, it was just a Facebook page with a bunch of articles on it until we got involved. We did the work to really, really grow it. We went to the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia. We covered that on our own damn dime that we still ain't never get paid for. Yes, I am still bitter and petty, because what I found throughout that journey of being involved in this online progressive movement, was a couple of things. One, that a lot of people really liked the idea of a Black woman cheering for Bernie, right? They like that. Like when I did live streams on the platform, people were like, oh, Jackie's here, yay. And they love that. And all I ever talked about, I would mention Bernie Sanders a little bit, but then I would start talking about the history of struggle that my people have endured long before Bernie Sanders came along. And as long as I like mentioned Bernie Sanders and people were like, well, yeah, that's why we have to vote for Bernie Sanders. And it's like, okay, yeah, that's cool. But then when I would start to point out that, listen, we can't have this conversation about fighting classism without confronting racism. People were extremely uncomfortable with that. They felt like they really just felt like if everybody got Medicare for all, if everybody got free college, if everybody got a higher minimum wage and a guaranteed minimum income, that all of the inequalities would disappear and go away. But me as a Black woman who my mother integrated her high school, I come from a hometown where the Klan used to run the town, and there are still racial tensions depending on where you go today. You can't. Medicare for all isn't going to address the racial bias in healthcare, right? That doctors and nurses and caregivers have, right? Free college tuition is not going to address the racial bias that professors have, particularly when they're teaching history. You understand? So having these conversations, I found, made people really, really uncomfortable. And I have to tell you, it wasn't just, white people. It wasn't just white Sanders supporters who were like, well, let's not talk about that right now. Let's just get Sanders elected. And then we'll deal with that later. And, look, Black folks have been told we'll deal with that later for 500 years. And there is no later for us, right? That's the first thing. But there were also some Black folks who were, quite honestly, they were opportunistically cashing in on this online progressive wave where they didn't want to upset their Patreon base, basically, and talk about Black issues. They just wanted to talk about Sanders and democratic socialism because that's what their mostly white viewers wanted to talk about, and they didn't want to lose their viewers and Patreon money. So, I mean, there was that where people were happy that Black people were seen as buying into Bernie Sanders' message, right? When the reality was that Black people have been fighting this fight long before Bernie Sanders came along. No disrespect to Sanders, because he's been fighting for, with Black folks. But to the extent that I saw that Black people made, but that white people, a lot of white people who now identified themselves as leftists, made Bernie Sanders not just a hero, but almost like a damn savior who could do no wrong, who could say no wrong, and you could not say anything negative about. You could not critique that man, was a problem. So when Sanders said things that were, objectionable to some people about reparations, you got piled on. When Sanders said things that was objectionable to some people about imperialism, you got piled on, and it was a very immature. It was a very immature and opportunistic political space, the online progressive space. So that was, and then there was the toxicity in some of those spaces where, because I had a tighter grasp on a wide range of history of labor struggle, of struggle for Black people, struggle for indigenous people, the struggle of Mexicans, and all of those struggles are interconnected. But you got people on this platform who all they ever want to talk about is fucking MMT. So then people that they want to watch my live streams more than they wanted to watch other people's live streams. So then I became a problem. So yeah, so that was, and then all of the people that we worked with, that we came in contact with, who now some of them have grown to have massive influential platforms that are almost seen as like news outlets. Those people been shady as hell from the beginning, from the Sanders online. Yeah, they've been crap. I've been trying to tell people that they've been crap. People didn't want to listen because they love these folks so much. And now their crappiness is being exposed, and all I can sit here and do is drink my coffee and say, I told you so.
Well, listen, we don't necessarily have to name names, because here this is Revolution. We kind of have a policy of avoiding internecine a left media beef, but I think I have an idea of the types of individuals that you're talking about, without a doubt. And what is really fascinating, right, is that you sharing with us your experience and time going through this, is that I remember this period vividly, because I had been writing for Black Agenda Report and had been in contact with Bruce and Glenn since 2007, and I started writing at Black Agenda Report with 2010. So I'm getting my political education literally like 2 or 3 times a week in my ear from Bruce Dixon and Glenn Ford, who are lifelong activists, lifelong radical leftists, both of them former Panthers, both of them coming out of the New Left period of the 60s. And even well before this whole constellation of Sanders Occupy phenomenon is out the gate, I'm already writing, articles challenging Obama, imperialism, U.S. policy in Haiti, and so on and so forth. And I vividly remember how interacting with not only many Black folk who were staunch Obama supporters, but how some of the quote unquote Bernie stands at that time was still Team Obama. Mm-hmm. And I actually remember the pushback, the challenge, the aggressive attacks that we at Black Agenda Report used to get for exposing the ultimate reality of the Obama presidency and the charade of the belief that somehow Democrats and liberals are more humane stewards of American empire than Republicans, and how collapsing that mythology really became complicated. So I remember seeing how all of these young, largely white, largely more, educated, trust fund adjacent, if you will, kids coming around in this Sanders space, acting as if they were like the vanguard of the revolution, right? And it's like, we will carry socialism to the hills, the mountains, and the rivers. It is our job. And I was like, yo, 4 years ago, you were just chilling, talking about how, Obama's the man. And what are you talking? But this is the thing though. And you might disagree with me here. And we can have a conversation here. I felt, and I will say this, I initially was not a Sanders supporter. As a matter of fact, I supported Sanders in the primary against Hillary, because anyone who knows my personal history, I despise the Clintons. I despise Hillary for a variety of reasons we don't have to go into right now. But I've never been a member of the Democratic Party, so it's not as if my vocalizing support of Sanders was going to affect my ability to vote for him, because I couldn't vote for him, not in Florida anyway, because you can't vote in Democratic primaries and vote in Florida unless you're a member of the Democratic Party. But one of the things that I was critical of my comrades on the Black left of in 2016, and I never told anyone that we should support Sanders or that we should corral around him. I had a problem with the fact that some of our comrades were making him public enemy number one because he was considered, a soft socialist, or people were saying, which was true, that his socialism stopped at the water's edge, meaning the border. And instead of realizing, I understand that this cat is, obviously he's not like Fidel Castro or Amilcar Cabral or any of the names you mentioned, but I think that the political Overton window, because I'm close to your age, and I remember how steeped in capitalist realism this country was politically for many years. And my position was that as Black leftists who have had a long, extensive history, I said, wouldn't it be better if we took this moment to expose to people that anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, socialist politics is not a white thing. It's not a Bernie thing. This is a Black political tradition that goes back over 100 years. And I was getting excoriated by people who were saying, like, nah, Bernie's the problem, so on and so forth. I was like, listen, like forget like Bernie. Yeah, can we take this moment to really fight the people like the Joy-Ann Reeds, the Ta-Nehisi Coates, and others who are making it seem like this socialism thing was a white thing, and these people really can never really have our interests at heart. And I was like, what do you mean this socialism was a white thing? There have been Black people who've been fighting capitalism in this country going back to the populist era and before. So my question to you is that, do you think at least there was some responsibility on the Black left who was existing at that time to puncture the charade of the monopoly on socialism by these white Bernie Sanders coterie? And do you think we might have dropped the ball in that regard?
I think there were some people who were absolutely correct when they were saying, look, Bernie Sanders is just a sheepdog for the Democratic Party. I mean, you can't argue with that. I think
Bruce Dixon was saying that in my ear every two times a week, all the time.
Yes, I mean, I don't
came up with that statement. As a matter of fact,
right? Exactly, and I'm actually a little jealous that I did not get into the Black Agenda Report fold until after that, because I would have loved to have gotten to know Bruce Dixon. I did get to meet him a couple of times, but I did not get to really get to know him. But and I did have more interaction with Glenn Ford, an amazing brother. And Ajamu Baraka he's practically my, at this point, he's my father. So I mean, but I think the criticism that people who we respect and love, some of those folks, had for Bernie Sanders was accurate, that he was a sheepdog for the Democratic Party because, that's just, he ran as a Democrat and he was trying to save the Democratic Party, right? I do think though that in the interactions I had with people who didn't like to hear that about Sanders, and when I tried to bring up this history, this 100 years, even longer than that, of African socialism, and the roots of African socialism. That, I mean, it was like it was nothing. You couldn't say that to people. You couldn't say to people in these Bernie spaces that, listen, okay, I'm fine with supporting Sanders to get us away from Clinton, and okay, fine. But understand that when Sanders gets in office, I'm gonna tax that ass too. I mean, he's not. I mean, it's not like we Black leftists are gonna vote for Bernie Sanders and everything is gonna be good. Oh no, son, we'll vote for Bernie Sanders because he's way better than the alternatives. But understand, we are trying to make it clear to you out the gate that Sanders is gonna have to deal with some things when he gets elected that comes from us that he doesn't even want to deal with now, which, like the issues of racism and having policies that address racism, not just unilateral universal policies.
But I guess the question is, how do you address racism when it's almost individualistic? So, for example, major corporations are going to find Black people, Black women, to put in positions of power, and it's fine. It's totally fine. But if you have a racist coworker, that's very individualistic. So what policy do you put into place to make someone not be racist? My question.
Well, no. See, fighting when I'm talking about addressing racism, I'm not talking about how people feel. I don't give a shit how you feel about me personally. I've worked with plenty of racist people who've actually treated me on the job kind of halfway decently, but I knew they hated my black ass, right? But there's nothing policy-wise that I can do about that. But the minute that I learn that they pay me less than someone who is less qualified than me, or who has the same qualifications as I do with the same experience, then that's where policy comes in. Then that's where I go to, well, don't go to HR, because that HR exists to protect the company. But that's where policy comes in, because see, we have all of these policies, you know, the affordable the Housing Act, and the Equal Opportunity Act for college and universities and all that kind of stuff. There are all these policies that exist, but there's no enforcement behind much of it when corporations actually violate these policies. And that has always been the problem. So my argument had been during this time that, listen, because that was always what, one of the things that people would say, oh, well, you can't change people's mind. And I think that this is where Black people do have an issue with explaining what we mean when we say challenging racism. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm not that kind of Christian. I don't give a shit about how you feel. That's between you and Jesus and whoever else you believe in, or whatever else you believe in. What I want to do is make sure that racial bias does not keep me from getting a fair interest rate on a home loan, doesn't keep me from getting qualified for a home loan because I'm Black, because the person sitting in the office who approves the loans thinks of me as a mud person, and not just that person, but that's the policy of the entire financial institution, Wells fucking Fargo. So they get to pay a fine, right? But they don't, but nothing changes in their business model. The people that they did these things to don't get made whole. Well, I hate that phrase. No, not don't get made whole. The people that they did these things to don't get restitution for the damages that were done to them by the corporation and the policies of the corporation. I want politicians, I want hospitals and doctors not to be able to say to me when I go in and say, my back is killing me, I don't know what the problem is. I don't want them to be able to say to me, look, you're just imagining this, you're just overweight, you just need to lose some weight, and I'm not giving you any pain medicine, because if I give you pain medicine, you're probably going to get addicted. But hands out prescriptions to unsuspecting white people like candy. That is and then when I bring it to the hospital administration's attention, nothing happens, nothing changes.
So this is, by the way, Jackie, this is Jason, our normal host, captain of the ship, who was in his car, probably in a McDonald's parking lot. I think he froze for a second there, but Jason has joined us. Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you. Yes. Can you hear us?
Okay.
It's a little choppy.
It looks like it's freezing. I can't tell if that's on your end or my end.
It's probably, I think it's your end.
It's definitely your end.
I'm sorry. I forgot to warn you. I'm real chatty, so.
But by the way, I always attribute the larger problem in terms of the fault, and I think it's a false race class dichotomy, to the fact that the people who are making these problematic assertions, that they're not really rooted in dialectical materialism, or they're not really rooted in even in Marxist analysis of capitalism. Because we've had Richard Wolff, who was a Marxist economist, on our show, explain that, listen, race is a form of class exploitation in capitalism. Sure. Period. Bottom line. There is a reason why Black people, we use the term disproportionately in the reserve army of labor, and Jason's like, that's too. When you say Pascal, when you say that, people think that you're saying that Black people are joining the Army National Guard. So I'm going to, but yeah, I said basically black people disproportionately get all the bad crap in capitalism. That doesn't mean that there aren't more white people who suffer the bad crap. It just means that disproportionately, because capitalism requires a racialized otherization to keep the illusion in the mind of the majority that they aren't suffering from it. It's just the black and brown people. The disproportionate weight of the adverse aspects of capitalism fall on those black and brown people. So for me, if you are someone who proposes to be a leftist or socialist or whatever, your attempt to engage in this race versus class false dichotomy is either A, a product of you just being a racist, or B, you not having any kind of real proper understanding of one of the reasons why the left or socialism has been appealing to black and brown people is that it's rooted in understanding how race is a necessary fulcrum of capitalist oppression.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know?
Right.
You know?
And you know, I always think of, Pascal, how because I always like think of ways to explain these concepts that like if I was talking to my grandmother, would she understand it? That's just kind of how I think. Partially because my grandma, when she would always ask me, "Are you out there making trouble?" I'm like, "Of course I am. I'm your grandchild. You know I am." So she would, ask me what I'm talking about, what I'm doing. So I explained to my grandma one time how during Reconstruction, after the Civil War, during Reconstruction, all of the Reconstruction governments in the South that elected these formerly enslaved Black men to their state houses. And a lot of these Reconstruction governments they drafted constitutions and they passed laws in which these former in which these formerly enslaved people put in the constitutions that they would petition Congress to buy land for formerly enslaved Black people and for poor white people, right? And all of their laws were geared toward justice for the formerly enslaved and also justice for poor white people. So you had the most oppressed group of people in this capitalist venture called slavery, coming out of that, having won their freedom and saying, okay, we know how to fix this. We have to deal with both of these issues. We have to deal with the people who were the most oppressed by slavery, which were the formerly enslaved Black folks, but we have to deal with poor white people too, because they were also exploited. So what happened to the Reconstruction government? The Reconstruction government was destroyed, and a lot of those Black legislators and a lot of white legislators in these Reconstruction governments were murdered by racist white people. That to me is indicative of the intrawovenness of racism and classism. If you can have, here we are, Black leftists, folks who are, I can directly trace my family to, my mom integrated her high school in Jarrett, Virginia. My family lived in a town where, the Klan ran the town. My parents were the subjects of violent racist attacks. And we, at least some of us in the family, have come to understand that there is a class war going on in this country that the white folks who own all the money in the town wage. And they wage it against the poor white people too. But this other thing that they do with the poor white people that works is they point to the poor Black folks and say, see, those Negroes are the reason you can't have any more than what you have. And if race were not an important part of this paradigm, that aspect of this strategy from the people who hold the power would not work. If this were just a class issue, then poor white people, more poor white people, would look at the bosses and say, you know what? It's not Black people who are the problem. Black people are not the ones who are keeping us from having more. It's not indigenous people. It's not Mexican people. It's you, motherfucker. And then they would join with other working class and poor Black folks and eat the bosses. But that's not what happens. In far too many cases, and we can look throughout the history of the Union, the struggle, the Union, the history of Union struggle, and we can look and see how even among immigrant groups, where the bosses were able to play upon the xenophobia of certain immigrant groups against each other, they were able to play upon the racism of poor white workers against Black people to break up what should be a natural solidarity. But racism is an integral part of the fight against capitalism, or, you know, addressing and fighting racism is just as important as fighting classism, because if racism didn't work to convince poor white people that they have nothing in common with the bosses, why keep using it? It's important because it works.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, and there is obviously there's truth in all that you said, but one of the I like to bring a kind of 800-pound gorilla in the room when we talk about the history of the quote unquote how race is used to facilitate the betrayal of white class adjacent folk in their cross-racial unities working with Black working class folk, is that one of the and I always do this because I like to remind our nationalists who always say, y'all can't work with those poor white folk, is that there's a little aspect that's often neglected here, is that the role of Black elites throughout history in also sabotaging those cross-racial alliances at the behest of the white ruling class.
That's true. That's true. Look, you know me, Pascal. I'm not going to sit here and act as if we just finished talking about Obama. I just did a monologue Friday for By Any Means Necessary about Kamala, Chief Soror, Head Soror in charge, Mrs. Ski Wee, Pearls and Chuck. I have a whole list of pejoratives about that woman.
I mean, Mrs. It is time for us.
We're going to move to current events. We're going to move there, but continue. You know, this is a good conversation. I want you to let's no, because it's very, because I went to college and law school. You know, I know these, fake it till you make it fraternity, sorority, Negroes. I'm a member of one of these Negro organizations. I know them well. I know how they function. I know their mentality. I understand the talentless 10th very well and all of their social accoutrement. And they will always be willing to pull out the shiv and like, y'all can't trust those working class whites to work with black poor folk because they always go and betray them. It's just never going to work. I said, y'all have been betraying and selling out poor and working class Black people for over 100 years, back to the days of free people of color. What the hell are you talking about?
I mean, the whole thing, it's so funny when you said the talentless 10th. It ought to be a lesson to folks that W.E.B. Du Bois himself backed off his own ideology about the talented 10th when he was like, that's a really bad idea because those are really, truly shitty people who honestly don't give a damn about the masses and sell the masses out. They just want their own check. That's all they want. Leadership, real leadership in the struggle for human rights for free Black people will come from the masses. That's where W.E.B. Du Bois finally got to that point. But
yeah, he did evolve after that. After a few years of supporting eugenics and a few other horrible shit that he did. I'm not a huge Du Bois stan by any stretch of the imagination.
And see, this is the thing. I'm not. I try not to make heroes out of anybody. Historically, you know why? Because
say it again for the people in the back.
I don't like to make heroes out of anyone at all ever. Do you know why? Because people suck, and it's not because there's anything endemically wrong with. It's just we're human beings. We have faulty thought processes. We believe things that are not logical or true or are actually harmful to other people. Sometimes we get shit wrong, and that is okay. I mean, so I try very hard to deal in ideology. When I bring up the name of a person, I'm talking about an ideology that they have espoused that I agree with. But I try not to lionize people, because there's always going to be something you find out about people that's going to be unsavory, something that they did that hurt somebody else, or, so I talk about ideology that we can use in this struggle as we go forward, not just any ideology. I think some of Du Bois's ideology is absolutely useful. I absolutely believe that the ideology of Amilcar Cabral and Thomas Sankara and Patrice Lumumba, Muammar Gaddafi, their ideology is absolutely useful in how we want to frame one socialist Africa, and from that, socialism that affects the rest of the world, because I am a Pan-Africanist. So I do believe that Africa must be free, or else nobody's going to be free. Because where is everybody stealing resources from now? The continent, and have been since 18. What was it? What was the day? I can never remember the date of the Berlin Conference.
Berlin Conference, 1880.
1885. Yeah, 1885. So but when we look at Black leadership throughout the history, the same arc of history that I'm talking about, going back to Reconstruction and that kind of thing, we look at these movements that were not centered, focused, or rooted in working class and poor struggles, like what's his face, Booker T. Washington, right? Who was very accommodationist, who was very, the white people want us to do certain things, and in order to get along with the white people, this is what we have to do. And there was always this faction of people among the oppressed group of people who were part of the comprador class. If they could get theirs, and the price they had to pay for getting their check was keeping their fellows in line with the oppressive system, oh yes, they take that check. Absolutely. And we see that today with these Black politicians.
We call it the Black political class. Some will say Black misleadership class. We know who we're talking about.
Yeah.
Getting the fat back and biscuits.
Butter biscuits, that big old plate of butter biscuits, while they telling you, you and me, Marcus and Pascal, to, be responsible and pull your pants up and be good fathers and all this kind of foolishness, while, people are still making $7.25 an hour and working 3 jobs just to, couch surf, because they can't afford anywhere to live, on their own. So that comprador class, and by the way, this is not unique to Black people. There is a comprador class in every group of people on this planet. If you watch any movie about the Nazi Holocaust, there is always an imprisoned person who is either Jewish or Polish, or someone who is in the concentration camp, who is the snitch for the Nazis. That this is just how oppression works. There's always a comprador class somewhere in there that's willing to sell out their people to the oppressors for a little extra crumbs. So the Kamala Harrises, the Lori Lightfoots, the Lloyd Austins, she's not mayor anymore, Keisha Lance Bottoms, Mayor Keisha. But the Marilyn Mosbys,
Val Demings.
The Val Demings, what's his face?
Listen, the Jim Clyburn's. Let's be gender. Let's have some gender equity here. Let's have some gender equity here.
Yeah, Jim Clyburn, the king. I'm not going to call him that.
Yeah. They call him that.
But yeah, they're not unique they're not a surprise. They're not unusual in the history of struggle. We've always had those people, and we've always had to fight against those people. Sadly, and this is the part. This is the part I think I'm kind of fuzzy on. I'm not sure why it is more difficult for us, and maybe it's just my perspective. Why do you think it is more difficult for us? Do you think there is as much criticism of these folks today as there has been in the past? Because I'm feeling like there's so much more, like, I don't know if it's exasperation or people are just kind of giving up, or they're just like, we can't do anything about these people. So, I don't know.
Well, it's really, I'm glad you asked that question. Let me jump in and respond. But my position has been, right, that, and we had a whole episode on our show we call the Mile Hour about this, is that one of the greatest obstacles to the emancipation of the Black poor and working class and the Black toilers and the proletariat is, from my humble analysis, the inability to effectively engage in class warfare. I believe that internal class warfare among Black and brown people is absolutely crucial to being able to clarify the role in which the comprador or the Black political class or the collaborator, if you will, plays as a linchpin in being able to maintain the system of oppression. No, I'm not advocating that we go out and, bring the guillotine and the machetes out for Jack and Jill, the Boule, and go to the Divine Nine. As much as we may appeal to that, that may appeal to us ideologically as a.
Why are you trying to ruin my fun, Pascal?
Okay, listen. Some things we can say in private, some things we can't say. No. Okay. But the larger point is that one of the obstacles, in my humble opinion, of being able to do that is how, and some people get offended with it, the charade of racial unity and racial kinship keep Black folk who are poor and working class from understanding that there are people who look just like you that help facilitate the carnage that's keeping you ground to dust, and there always have been. And that's why when people say, oh, race first, it was like, does race first include Clarence Thomas for you? Because it doesn't for me. And I'm not saying race first or class first. Why do we have to have such binary operating principles when we talk about politics? I don't necessarily believe in race first or class first. I believe in sound praxis first, and trying to understand who your friends and enemies are. Listen, I want to let Marcus jump in because Marcus has not had a time to chime in his thoughts.
I know. I'm sorry.
I know. I want to just even say, like, jumping off of what Pascal was saying and moving forward, is how do you see yourself, and I guess how would you advise people to even engage with these, and progressive, democratic, socialist, and also like organizations and spaces, not trying to like pick on any one person or another. Is there an opening to say Medicare for all is just a step along the way towards a, complete public healthcare system, which is very much necessary where a lot of other policy places are put into place as far as education, training, even just building the structures in the communities to, house these healthcare systems. There's a lot that comes with it that it actually give communal autonomy, and for everyone, right? Black folks, poor white folks, whoever. Yeah, I guess my question is, do we still engaged, or are we just, trying to do your own program and get out? Because I don't know, Bernie Sanders might be done, but somebody else is coming on the back end, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we can really afford this, either and kind of thing. Because there are many of our people, many Black people, and many poor white people who are still very, very wedded to electoral politics. And there's really, you're not going to change that. That's not, as long as this so-called republic exists and there continue to be elections, there are still going to be people who are going to be like, we have to vote. So, and that's going to change everything. So what do we do with those people? Do we like ignore them? Do we like, no, I don't think we do. I think that's why we have political education, and we do encourage people. We do try to connect with people who are still very committed to the electoral process, and to these political parties. We do try to connect to them and explain why neither one of these political parties they're not your friends, and alternatives, and show them that alternatives have existed. So at the same time, we are cultivating people from the ground up, from the communities, to fill in those roles. If you're going to have a political party, it has to be a political party that is focused on and led by working class people, that pushes working class issues. So that has to be done. And it has got to be done simultaneously. None of this is like an either or. I just don't think there's ever been a revolution in history that, you know, someone said, we're going to just do this one thing and then we're just going to change society. No, lots of different things were done at the same time. So we have to deal with people where they are on this, you know, vote spectrum. Yes, there are going to be a lot of people who are still wedded to the Democratic Party, and some of those folks you're just not going to change. That's just the truth. But for people who begin to realize that their needs are not being met by either political party, there is an inroad for us to say, okay, fine. If you're going to vote, make sure you vote for a candidate who is clear and uncompromising on these issues. But understand that getting this candidate elected into office is not the end of the struggle. That is just the beginning of the struggle, because getting these issues implemented is not going to solve all of the problems that we are fighting against. So there is a continual exposure of the inadequacies, even of policies like Medicare for all. As good as it is, as far and above better as it is than what we have now, it is not full socialism. Right? So we always have to be working toward socialism. I mean, if you're going to be about it, be about it. You know, don't take the democratic model, you know, Denmark model of socialism. No, be about it. Work toward socialism, because it is either that or we're still leaving people behind. And socialism, by the way, is not like the end result of anything. Socialism is a process in itself that is constantly refreshing and checking itself and recommitting itself to its principles.
That's a very, very important statement you make, Jackie. And I want to, oh, by the way, we should take this super chat here. Shout out to Landrew for the generous super chat. Who is our new united voice? I do believe we need that singular voice to all, as proven, be successful movements. I'm not a big fan of the we need the superhero and leader paradigm. I think that's been a problem in the past. And I don't necessarily think we need one united voice. I personally believe we need a better political educated mass than one united voice.
Yes.
I'm a big fan, student, and admirer of the Ella Baker model, which said that you know strong people don't need strong leaders, which is about giving political education to the masses and be able to be the ones to determine their leaders and their voice and their choices. And I think that is more effective. Of course, they will choose leaders. I'm not anti-leaders. I'm not anti mechanisms of organization. What I'm saying is that I think that there's too much of an inclination to believe that we have to have this one charismatic leader, who usually is a man, to be able to actually be the voice of the hopeless downtrodden. I think the more important thing that we should be engaging in is the political education of the masses in helping them find a way to develop their politics. And we should not romanticize the working class, poor, and the proletariat and the toilers, right? Because tons of those folk have reactionary, horrible politics. Mm-hmm. And why shouldn't they, in the kind of world that we are, in which capitalist realism penetrates every consciousness of society, right? But I want to really play off something that Jacqueline said is very important, because people always ask, why should Black folk be into socialism? Socialism ain't going to cure racism. And I was like, I'm glad you said that. I tell people, listen, I'm not expecting socialism to cure racism. As a matter of fact, my goal isn't to cure racism. My goal is to take away the tools of power that allow racists to affect my life and the people who look like me who are affected by racism. And the reason I'm a socialist is because it takes the means of production, which means who controls the businesses, the jobs, the hospitals, the oil wells, the movie houses, the TVs, as well as the educational, ideological superstructure, and it demands that Black, brown, white, and everyone working class folk own a share of that. And we battle to make sure that our share is not going to agree with your share, oppressing us based on the way our skin looks. So socialism is not a silver bullet to end racism. Socialism is the silver bullet to take away the material power of racists to be able to implement racism and adversely affect Black, brown, or people of otherwise communities. And that is the goal, because racism only works if you have the material means to implement it into the society you live in. And take away those means and put it in a position where you either democratize them or you take them completely from the ruling class, and then it diminishes their ability to implement that racism in that society.
That's that word. Yep, that's that word. And I'm actually just sitting here thinking of Nicaragua right now, where a couple of our comrades went to Nicaragua during their elections, and this is why I'm never going to give up on people who are still very emotionally connected to voting, because see, the thing for me, I think I'm learning, and my thinking about this is evolving, which proves that I don't know everything, and nobody does. And I'm cool with that. I like the fact that the way I think about things can change as I'm exposed to people, especially people younger than me, who are way smarter than me and way braver than me, and can bring some things into focus that I may not have thought of. Some younger comrades went to Nicaragua during the elections and posted some videos, and I thought, those folks voted in Nicaragua, and the Sandinista government has, it's a socialist government that they've been fighting the United States for, and imperialism for decades. In Venezuela, they vote. Those folks, that's a socialist government. In China, they vote. They actually do. The socialist government. Cuba, they vote. Socialist government. Vietnam. You understand?
All these places also vote at higher rates than we do.
That's
by a lot.
That's the thing. So the problem. So I began thinking, and the videos that I saw from my comrades from Nicaragua in particular were where the people were excited to vote, and they were the people who looked like us. And they were clear on why they were voting and what they were voting to defend the Sandinista government, So I realized that the problem is not voting in itself. That is not the problem. The problem, and I think this is where a lot of radicals get it kind of wrong a little bit. The problem is not voting. The problem is the system in which voting resides. Voting as a mechanism, it is absolutely a tool, as we've seen in these other countries. Like Kwame Ture said, that voting is a tool. It's not the solution. It is a tool, but it can only be used as a tool effectively for the people when it is within a system that itself is designed to be for the people. We currently have a system in this country that does not exist to support or provide for the people at all. So voting in this system is not intended to give us anything. That's why voting in this system doesn't work for working class and poor people, for the proletariat, for the masses and the toilers. That's why voting doesn't work. Not because voting is bad, but because the system sucks. So I think that's where kind of radicals who have gotten to, I'm just not going to vote. And I'm not going to tell anybody that they should or should not vote. But I mean, you don't feel like voting, don't. I don't blame you. But this is why I'm never going to just dismiss people who still are very committed to voting in the electoral process, because it's not voting that's the problem. It's the system that voting resides in. This system is never going to give us the results that we need, because the choices we have to vote for, they exist to prop this system up, not to serve the people.
Well, my position on voting is that I like the position that Jamil Al-Amin, formerly known as H. Rap Brown, stated to Gil Noble when he asked him about voting. He said, voting is an opportunity for us to organize and politically educate our people. Right. I do not discourage voting. I vote, I engage in the political process. And I do that because I believe that it is a moment in American political society in which organizing, mobilizing, and political education is most ripe to be effective. And I think that engaging and indulging and creating the mass popular will is more valuable than just telling people, voting is valueless. Because there is a reason why elements of the ruling class have tried to take away and deny people the capacity to vote. Mm-hmm. So we should not. I'm leery of those of us on the left who become so anti-electoral that we diminish the fact that there are elements, particularly reactionary forces in the ruling class, who have been trying to deny people the right to vote for a long time. I do believe that voting is important as an organizational mechanism and vehicle and has radical potentiality. But I also agree with what Jackie is saying, is that in the current way in which the system is orchestrated, it really ends up becoming a choice between two bourgeois parties that are not really rooted in transformation. But I don't think it necessarily has to stay that way. The question becomes is that how do you operationalize a political education and create a mass popular will to actually challenge the existing paradigm? And I think that that's what's more important, is creating what Bruce Dixon would call going out into meet space, where you meet people and you physically rub against them, and you basically are engaging in that hard politics, not the digital stuff that we do here at This Revolution or everyone else, where at best, we're giving political education at best, but we are not trying to pretend that we're some kind of vanguards of the revolution or leaders of the masses. That would be a charade and totally, absolutely intellectually bankrupt. We are at best infotainment, trying to give people political education, being generous, frankly.
I think it's important to also remember is not only within electoral politics, but you take the Black Lives Matter protests, and that's something that the Democratic Party, they got the most bump up. They got the most registered voters for the Democratic Party during that summer than any other time. If we don't look at that as we done fucked up and did not do the same to swell our ranks and to always make sure, I mean, like you said, where there are people, you should be meeting them and talking about these policies that are going to better affect their life. You're not just gonna, you're just not going to go anywhere. And I speak too is we get focused on federal politics. That's just the one thing that we could all come together and dunk on federal politicians, because that is a common thing. But when you get to the local level, not only is that where you can actually get into some of these positions to really affect people's lives, but also the reactionary right is getting in those positions right now. They are winning seats in these spaces right now, and these liberals have no answer for it.
No, what's really funny about what Mark's talking about? It's not really funny, but it's tragic, right? You see all of this digital space and these articles talking about how the Republicans are organizing at a local level to take over electoral boards and school boards and changing the direction of politics in the municipalities. And I'm like, well, how come the liberals or the left or the progressives or the DSA or this? Why aren't we doing that? Why people are always talking about like, oh, Bannon is doing this and Bannon is doing that. I was like, why exactly isn't there a comparable mechanism being done being financed by the left flank of capital or the progressives or the left to do that kind of organizing? Why are we acting like the reactionary right, which has never been interested in the consciousness of mobilizing the consciousness of the masses? Why are we acting like they have a monopoly on tactics that the left has been known for years? And again, to me, this demonstrates the fundamental unseriousness of the liberals and the Democrats in their attempt to claim that they're trying to fight this reactionary right. I don't believe them when they say
and I'll
that.
say real quick too, this coming up midterms, it's like I'll say the time is ticking as far as like getting, into any races or anything like that. But if you've got anybody that's already on the board, this coming up midterms, like, I mean, everyone's saying it, Democrats are probably going to get smoked, i.e. their base is not going to show up. Therefore, that means there might be some easier times getting some people pushed in, and then, hey, surprise, guess what? There's a socialist sitting on some city board or some school, something or other. But that's where, this coming up and any type of like the off your elections, those are the times where you can get it in.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying this for years, and I mean, literally since the Tea Party finally took over Congress. Because what did they do? And people didn't like it because they're like, oh my God, you're giving too much credit to the crazy racist. I'm just talking about their strategy. Yes, there were a bunch of crazy racists, but look at what they did. They organized grassroots campaigns for local offices like dog catcher, tax assessor, school board member, the recorder of deeds. And then they move those people up to the next office, and then they fill that vacancy with somebody else. And they had, pancake dinners where these people campaigned and this kind of thing about, people say the Tea Party had money behind them. Please stop believing that was true of every right-wing Tea Party candidate. It was not. It really was not. These were people, a lot of these folks were people who had campaigns in tents, in people's churches, on church lawns, had pancake dinners, and the money they raised came from the people that they talked to. But even if they did have money behind them, their strategy of doing grassroots organizing, getting out there, talking to people, giving people their message, why can't we do that?
I think
I don't understand what's keeping.
The only important thing to take away by saying that the Tea Party had money backing them was that when you look at the resistance to the Tea Party takeover, which there was none, we can expect the exact opposite. Right. That's right. Where like they have no problem with people on the reactionary right coming right in, and like you might have some Republicans out there saying, oh, this isn't the grand old party that I know, but like bullshit. It's not the one because they're saying it out loud. It was the time before your time because they're back to that, just saying it the hell out loud. But at the end of the day, you're right. Like the tactics, just getting to where people are, only the difference is what to expect as far as the opposition that comes from literally like the liberals and conservatives.
And the other thing that I noticed that the Tea Party did in those early days was they didn't care where they campaigned. Right? They campaigned everywhere. They went to people's church. They went to the VFW. They went to the library. They were everywhere. They were on the corner. You know, they didn't give a damn if there were two people out there listening to what they had to say, even if they were out there in their crazy ass looking tricorn hat with the tea bags hanging off of them. They were out there. They were doing. What is wrong with us? We have political parties in Maryland, Ujima People's Progress Party, out there doing good work, working class led, proletariat led, working class policies. How come nobody's supporting them? How come nobody, all the shit that's going on in Baltimore right now, that people should be flocking to Ujima because they are the truth. But people look at leftist political parties that are outside of the Democratic Republican paradigm and say, oh, they're not going to go anywhere. Well, of course they're not if you're not going to support them.
Well, check it out, Jackie. We talked about this when you invited me on Black Power Media, and I pitched this idea to you, and I remember you liked it. You liked it. The idea is, okay, and people tell me this all the time. I've been on various podcasts with a good friend of the show, Janice Graham, Our Common Ground, when she was like, Pascal, you have to understand, you have to deal with Black people where they are. Black people are Democrats. And I'm like, okay, Jen, Black people are Democrats. Let's concede that. If we concede that Black people are Democrats, and we also concede that there's currently a bit of a division in the Democratic Party, and there is a corporate wing, neoliberal corporate imperialist wing, and there is a burgeoning, whatever problems we may have on it as a revolutionary radical leftists, maybe it's fine. There is a burgeoning progressive left wing in the tent of the Democratic Party. If we realize, right, as Black leftists and radicals and revolutionaries, that most Black folk are stuck in the right neoliberal, corporate, Jim Clyburn loving wing, wouldn't it be at least a step forward for us as radical leftists to encourage a Black, brown, and working class infiltration and takeover of the progressive wing to force a capitulation amongst those corporatists to the demands of the more left progressive wing of the Democratic Party? What are your thoughts?
I think that for those who want to do that, yeah, do that. And I also think for those who want to go the Ujima People's Progress Party route and create another party, do that. All of that shit needs to be done. Because what I think happens, what should happen, if we're strategic and if we're smart, I think we fight on all fronts. I think this is, and I know that this is,
say it again, please. Can you say it again?
And I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, no. Look, listen, I want the revolution in the streets like tomorrow. I do. I honestly, I'm telling you, I do. I got my stockpile in the pantry. I'm good. I want the revolution in the streets. I got the safe house going here. I'm cool with that. But I understand that not everybody is right there. And while capitalism is dying, the bitch is dying. Oh, sorry, I said that word I've been trying not to say for a whole week. Sorry. But it's dying. But I'm 55. I may not see the end of capitalism in my lifetime. I would love to, but I may not. So what do we do until then? What do we do until the revolution in the streets, which I do believe is coming? I think that's inevitable. I do think we fight on all fronts. And I do think we do have ideologically solid leftist, working class, proletariat, Black, brown, leftists, white leftists to truly infiltrate these leftist political parties. I know somebody who did that with the Green Party in Chicago. And I have to tell you, and let me tell you, you're going to get resistance from within that party. So I know we were talking about DSA, Pascal. So let me tell you what's going to happen, because this is what happened with the brother in Chicago with the Green Party. Green Party chapter in Chicago was all white. He did this very thing. He's like, I'm tired of these white people because they're on the south side of Chicago and they're not paying any attention to the issues of the folks on the south side of Chicago. So he goes in, joins the party, challenges them on their, insufficient policies or platform or whatever. Got elected to a position of authority and started making some changes. And then the pushback started, and then, the nastiness started. But eventually he did change the party, I think. And I've lost touch with him because, like I said, I don't make heroes out of people. He had some issues. But but just understand that when we're talking about taking over a leftist kind of party, because I think we need to disabuse ourselves of the notion that we can take over the Democratic Party. That's not going to happen.
I'm not saying we're going to take over.
No, I'm saying no. I'm just making it clear. We're not going to take over the Democratic Party. We're not going to take over the Republican Party. But if there are people who want to infiltrate and turn DSA and those kind of the Green Party into a more leftist, more solidly leftist ideological party, yeah, I'm cool with that. I think that needs to be done. At the same time that independent working class proletariat political parties need to be established and grow outside of those apparatuses. And at the same time that those of us who are prepared for the revolution in the streets are doing political education. And then at some point, what I think we should not do is that we should not be opposed to each other's efforts. I think sometimes we spend too much time, calling out what other folks aren't doing right. I mean, I think in the revolution for the change in this system that's necessary, there's a role for everybody. There's something for everybody to do. We're not all going to do the same thing. I am not one to want to infiltrate a political party. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do that. I will do the political education. I will radicalize everybody you send my way. I sure will. And I will feed them well. And, they can come hang out at the safe house and, play with the radical dog. I'll do that. But I am not one but that doesn't mean there's no validity in it. And maybe that's where I'm a little bit different from some of my radical friends. But I just think there's a need to operate on all fronts to the extent that we can and keep the strategy loose enough so that when the time comes to consolidate our efforts, we're not unable to do that because we've spent so much time, calling each other sellouts because this group hasn't done what we want to do. You know what I mean?
No, I like it. I'm more in agreement with you than you may realize, because I'm not one of these people under the illusion that we're going to take over the Democratic Party. That's not my position. My position is to profit from the fracture, or help facilitate a fracture within the Democratic Party and use that moment of rupture as a means to force them to capitulate into reform. And there is a debate to be had as to, some would say, the binary of revolution or reform. I'm not a fan of binaries. I have no problem with revolution at all if we can make it happen at all. But at the same time, I realize, as Amilcar Cabral said, that these politics are not about lofty ideals. They're about improving the quality of people's lives. And that being said, is that if we can force the ruling class and the state to capitulate to reforms on our terms, I'm not going to say, well, I'm going to reject your reform because I'm waiting for the revolution. At the same time, I'm not saying everyone should agree with me. I'm not saying that,
Mm-hmm.
but that's kind of where my politics are, is that the revolution should always be something that we are operating towards in imperialist capitalist society, no question. But at the same time, does that mean that we are opposed to forcing and the ruling class? And by the way, the kinds of reforms I'm talking about are not some simple nonsense that you're going to get out of the Democrat. I'm talking about reforms that come about as a result of making capitalism have to realize that it cannot function on its terms anymore unless they capitulate to the demands of those who are radically opposing it. Are we going to say that we're not interested in those reforms? I'd like to hear your thoughts, Jackie.
I think whenever we talk about reform, it's always from the context of what the Democrats have already done in regard to reform. So it's always bad. I mean, reform is not, I am not a reformist. I think maybe it's for that reason, because the language has such a terrible reputation that reform just translates to, oh, the Democrats have screwed us over again, and we haven't really changed much of anything. So I think that, there are definitely policies that need to be implemented. Like I said, like Medicare, we need Medicare for all. If we want to talk about a reform in the purest sense of the word, yes, Medicare all is a reform that we absolutely need to the healthcare system in this country, if you want to frame it that way. Yes, but Medicare for all is not the goal. As a socialist, for me, that's not the goal. And that is, for me, the limits of reform, that the reform itself for a lot of people is the goal that they think we should be working toward. And I think that's the danger of building a strategy around reform rather than revolution. And I saw in a comment, and again, not to say that, reforms that are that will bring about a material change in people's lives are bad. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that the goal always needs to be revolution, changing this system, and not just, the stopgap measures, because that's really what they are. The stopgap measures along the way, to keep people from dying. But really, we want to save the entire society. And honestly, really, let's be a little bit aspirational for a minute, that's not something I'm usually accused of. But the reason revolution for me is the goal, and always has to be the goal of any strategy that any leftist pursues, is because we're not just trying to change a system, we're trying to save humanity. We're trying to save humanity. I'm seeing, a couple of chats, oh, a revolution is not realistic. You know what? I'm sure people said that. I'm sure people said that to the enslaved at one point. Oh, slavery will always be 238 fucking years. I mean, I'm sure they were like, oh my God, we are never ending this system. I'm sure the divine right of kings, at one point, folks were like, we are never going to get kings to not be able to do whatever the hell they want. The divine right of kings went away. Every empire dies. Every empire dies. In the entire history of human civilization, all empires die, and they all die basically for the same reasons. They all die under the weight of their own greed and hubris.
Internal contradictions.
Absolutely. So the United States is absolutely an empire. Remember, the empire that dominated the globe before the United States was the British Empire. And while the United Kingdom as a country still exists, it is no longer an empire. That empire has died. It still has colonies, but the sun has set on the British Empire now. So the U.S. empire will die. The question is, for us, what are we going to build when that empire dies? That's the question for me.
That's the building part is the part I'm always more interested in, and I want to elaborate a bit more on your point. Is that I totally agree that reform for the sake of reform is capitulation. The type of reform I'm talking about is the reform that exists only after you have developed a radical revolutionary cadre and base of a proletariat or a mass people or a working class movement that forces the state and capital to capitulate, not something that comes out of some kind of Brookings Institute think tank. I'm talking about reform that is a consequence of revolutionary and radical praxis from those who are opposing the institutions that force reform. I don't think that we should turn away or turn down that reform. I think that what we need to do is be willing to build a cadre that can challenge the existing institution.
I agree with that. I think that's true. I mean, because at the end of the day, we have to do that. I mean, we have to build that revolutionary cadre outside of the system. And like we said, there are people who are going to be committed to this electoral system still. So why not build a revolutionary cadre in the system? I mean, and it ain't going to be with folks like let's be clear. Let me try to be clear. I'm not talking about with folks like AOC and what's the Rokana, who are fine with imperialism. We need to lay down some ground rules for, look, we can't, and going back to the Bernie Sanders thing, this is the problem that people had with criticism of Bernie Sanders. You can't tell me that you are a socialist, but you don't have a problem calling Nicolas Maduro a dictator. You don't have a problem supporting sanctions on Cuba and Venezuela, and Iran, and continuing to support sending military aid to Israel. So we have to be clear on what the ideology for that internal cadre is. And honestly, that struggle has to be ruthless, just like the class struggle has to be. You can't be, I don't want to hear any of this wishy-washy, yeah, but maybe the people in Venezuela, maybe, we can, convince, maybe the election wasn't, they ain't none of your business. You stay out of Venezuela's business. Stop being an imperialist. We are anti-imperialist. We do not support imperialist U.S. policies of any kind. And if you cannot abide by that, then no, you're not a member of this cadre. You're of no use to us. I think we have to be that brutal and that clear.
I think, go ahead, Marcus, jump in.
Yeah, I was just saying, I agree with everything that you're saying. And like, if it would be, beneficial, in my opinion, if thinking of things like, even as a left, of like a budding nation unto itself within the United States, and that you're going to have a diplomatic arm, you're going to have a more kinetic arm, a more militant arm. But are these things working in conjunction towards the same goal? Right now, absolutely not. If we did have that possibility, and even going back to the question of like the leader, right? Do we have a leader? Do we need a leader? Any of those things? I mean, we need a coalition. We need communal leaders to agree to work together. Like that's what we need, is more of a coalition, and not worrying about who exactly is I don't know, has the hottest takes or is able to give a good speech. Because at the end of the day, I want to live in a society who the person who can just speak well is just the person who can communicate well. Like that's just it. There's no levying this person up on some type of higher standard because they're charismatic. Some people are just as not, and that shouldn't matter. Everyone's got their role to play. But at the end of the day, the goal, I mean, you've said it, a few times already. If we don't have an understanding of where we're going, it does not matter. What we do, our actions are absolutely just worthless at that point, if not in search of an actual goal that we all agree on is right, and to the point of the failures of, you know, AOC, Jamal Bowman, you know, especially on the foreign policy edge. That's where you got to say, like, not to, I'm not trying to like be the like devil's advocate thing of like, but you could take away the support and the building of mutual aid groups that AOC's done. You could say, okay, we want to, you keep that, but the rest of this has to go. There is no option, you know, and I think that's actually where I would hope an electoral politics initiative that's actually rooted in on the ground work, you know, and not this, oh, hey, we're just talking about policy, stuff like that. That would be the more beneficial avenue, but it's not existent right now.
My position is that you will have your AOCs, your Jamal Bowmans, and the people who quote unquote call themselves socialists capitulating to imperialism as long as you do not have a movement of people on the left organized with a mass of people to call them out, pressure them, or make demands in their own constituencies.
True.
What I'm saying is that, and this is let me make this clear: the inertia of electoral politics is reactionary. In other words, the inertia or the energy of electoral politics is rooted in preserving the efficacy or function of the system as it exists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Once you realize that even if you get someone with your politics in the system, at best, he just becomes a likely enemy that you can at least negotiate with. At best. So there's no reason to romanticize even our own people we get who are in political positions of electoral office. At best, what we can expect for them is that they're people who will at least listen to us when we pressure them.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't, then they weren't even worth us putting them in power in the first place. But I think the problem is not so much, I don't have a problem with people critiquing any politician, but I think the problem I have with the focus on AOC is that why didn't we create a mechanism to basically pressure her where she didn't have a choice but to listen to anti-imperialists?
Mm.
Why are we shocked that a politician capitulates to the state?
Right. And you know, let me just what's going on in the chat right now. People tell me I pay too much attention to the chat when I'm on shows. It's kind of true. I'm because I'm petty. That's why. So somebody's kind of mad because I said that you know Bernie supported sanctions on Cuba, and that's actually not true. That's right. I was actually incorrect on that. He didn't. But let's be clear about Bernie Sanders, and this is the problem I've always had when having conversations about Bernie damn Sanders. People will pick on one thing that you say in the whole critique of Sanders' fucked up imperialist policies. And it's like, well, no, he never said that one thing. Okay, he didn't approve sanctions on Cuba. That's absolutely right. But he did approve sanctions. He voted for sanctions on Iran and Venezuela, though.
How about, you know, the F-35 is built in 45 out of the 50 states. The final assembly is in Vermont, home of Senator Bernie Sanders, who voted for the F-35 program.
How about that? How about he voted for the Libya Sanctions Act? He voted for sanctions on Libya. This is why I don't make heroes out of people. Because look, I remember like one of my favorite musicians of all times is Fela Kuti. I could be anywhere, hear some Fela Kuti, lose my mind, start dancing, and freaks people out. When I learned that Fela was, I mean, he was a dog. He was a dog. He married all the women in his band. It was just really bad. And he was very political. He challenged the government of his country. So, you know, he was always getting arrested. So there were political reasons I loved him as well. But personally, he was a dog. I mean, I'm not going to hear that and go, well, you know, Fela, his contribution to music was more important than the women that he dogged. No, it's true. The man dogged women out pretty bad. So can we please get off this, You can't criticize anything Bernie Sanders says. You can't slander him. Stop. The man had some messed up policies about imperialism. And if we are leftists, we ought to be able to call that out, because how in the world are you going to be a so-called leftist and not have international solidarity with people around the world who are fighting U.S. imperialism? And one of the politicians that drive U.S. imperialism is Bernie Sanders, who votes for U.S. imperialist policies. Cut that out.
And saying it isn't making it a big deal.
Oh, my God.
It's a big deal that people are murdered all over the world because of the U.S. empire. But calling this out, no matter who, right? Like, that's not a big deal. The response to it, the how dare you say this to Papa Bernie? That's what makes this a big deal, instead of, oh, okay, this is just true. How do we move forward understanding that, hey, politicians will fail us? Even at this point now, where is the failure of progressive or left politicians, right? Which is foreign policy. That's the huge fucking loss. Because at the end of the day, too, is like, even like you got this like progressive caucus. Pramila Jayapal is saying, "Oh, we're really steeped in progressive values now," but you could give a cash giveaway for contractors and then go on to do 7.8 trillion for the military, and most of those progressives are voting for that too. We gotta just recognize where the failures are, where we still gotta push, because that's where it really recognizes what is the work that needs to be done.
Right. It's, so it's not about demonizing politicians or expecting politicians to be perfect. For me, it is about ideology. It really is about ideology, and how policies behind ideologies either destroy people's lives or affirm them. And at any given time, every politician has supported a policy that has had a hand in destroying people's lives, and that really ought to be one of the things that why are we hedging on that? I don't get why we're hedging on that.
Well, listen, we are coming into our last 15 minutes, and we wanted to get to some current events. I'm really happy that Jacqueline is here. I'm enjoying her presence. We're getting into all kinds of trouble. This is amazing. But let's talk about Soror, Chucks and Pearls, and Ski Weed and all that. Kamala Harris. Use the Googles. Get
this heifer right here.
See, it is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day. Every day it is time for us to agree that there are things and tools that are available to us to slow this thing down. She said that. That is a direct quote.
What did that
This one reminded me, it's the AKA's Founders Day, so this is like slander. It's like, oh my God, we're talking about...
No, I take it back.
Oh, my uncle is an A Phi A, and
that's
wife,
my fraternity.
She's an AKA, and I can't say bad things about the fraternity. I can say
bad things about him all the time, and I'm a member.
But I can't say bad things about the sorority around her. So I'm thank God they live in Michigan. So here it go. It's Kamala Harris. That woman compared needing to find a at-home COVID test that the government is supposed to provide, which damn well don't exist, because y'all went to your Walgreens and your CVS and your corner stores and your Giant and your Trader Joe's, and them damn shelves are empty, and you looked online and they don't have no stock there. She was asked by Craig Melvin, why didn't the administration buy at-home tests in the fall during the Delta variant? And her response was, well, we just ordered millions. Oh, so you don't have them. And you know why else you don't have them? Because all of the company, Google, they get tests sent to them, as many as they want. JP Morgan Chase, Delta Airlines, all of the big corporations, they can get as many tests as they want, first dibs. But you and me, we got to use the Googles to go find where a test that the government is supposed to provide us is, knowing damn well it's not there because they don't have none because they just ordered them. But it's time for us to do the things that we've been doing to stop this thing and slow it down, like yesterday and that thing over there, whatever the hell she said that made no sense.
Yo, she was engaged in like, forget word salad. It was like a word like smorgasbord. I was like, what was this woman saying?
I mean, she started going into folds of space and time.
I mean, Craig Melvin asked her, well, don't you think that the administration needs to repair or correct its staff or change course? Then she started going to this monologue that sounded like she was getting high at like a Parliament Funkadelic conference.
Listening to Tupac.
She was like, and the stars, quasars, and bars of the moon in the third tower tells us that we must. I was like, she sounded like some Oswald Bates skits from The Living Color. I was like, what's going on here?
Oh my God. And then she compared needing to find a test to looking for a restaurant that you want to go to. Like, me wanting a juicy porterhouse, or actually I don't like porterhouse, me wanting a juicy ribeye and wanting to find the best place to have a juicy ribeye is not the same as me needing to find a test to see if I have this virus that continues to mutate and spread, that the government is supposed to provide the tests for, that they haven't.
I think it's important, right? We can give the Biden administration a break, okay? Because as of this week, you can get reimbursed for the tests that you have to pay for, if you can find them, by the insurance, right? You get it reimbursed by the insurance that you don't have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was a special added touch. That was just the cherry on top of
really
the
listening
of the Biden administration. Fuck you, Sunday.
Yeah, listening to the people, right?
Well, Jack, I want to ask you a question, and we're going, because I'm glad Jackie's here, because we're going to get controversial.
More than we have.
We're getting there.
I want to ask a question. Right?
Caused enough trouble.
What is your argument? As, for example, there was an argument that was put forth in a publication that I sent to both you and Jason. The publication makes the argument that it's time to end the disrespect towards high-profile Black women leaders. This is in the Chicago Sun-Times, which say, countless news reports during the past week have bemoaned the increasing hostility people are expressing towards each other in their everyday interactions. We have seen this lack of civility and respect come to a boil locally as well, especially towards Black women. And they're talking about Sister Girl in Chicago,
Lori
Lightfoot, Kamala Harris, and all of the female members of, let me put this in the chat and have Djene elevate this article. The female members of the Black political class. And I would like to defer to you, Jacqueline, as a Black woman, as to how do you respond to these arguments? Because it's going to be easy for those of us who are not gender specific in our critiques of the Black political class, and it happened to be of the male persuasion, to be deemed as being quote unquote sensitive or being unsupportive of Black women. I usually don't give a damn about those critiques, but I would like you to respond to these positions as someone saying that like we're being too hard on Black women. And is Black girl magic being used as a recruitment technique for Black women at the service of empire? Throw that in there as well.
I am a Black woman and I say fuck Black girl magic because it is nothing more than a political ploy to convince Black women that there is something special that we have that can save the world from the shitty political choices of the establishment.
Ooh, I like it.
I've been around a minute. I've been Black that whole time. And I've been, female, whatever, that whole time. Yeah, and I've experienced plenty of racism, plenty of genderism. Yes, sexism, all that kind of stuff. But these folks, these Black women, Lori Lightfoot is no more a representative of the LGBTQIA community than Kamala Harris is a representative of Black women like me, because these people are, and this goes back to what you said earlier, Pascal, these are, Black like who? Who are we talking about? Black like who? Are we talking Black folks like Lori Lightfoot, who refused to respond to the teachers in Chicago last week who were only asking for regular testing for students and tracing before they came back to school for in-person teaching, in-person learning, to protect the students and the staff and the teachers at school. Something, by the way, that private schools get, right? Public schools don't get that. And the teachers, they weren't even asking for more money. But Lori Lightfoot basically told those teachers, fuck y'all. You ain't getting shit. Bring them kids back to school. So what is so special and inspirational and aspirational about Lori Lightfoot being a Black woman and being an LGBTQIA woman when she will throw the children of working class and poor Black kids to this virus without a heartbeat, not even giving them the opportunity to keep them safe? Now, why should I have any more respect for her just because she is Black and gay, or because they are Black and gay? I'm sorry, I don't want to misgender her. Just because they are Black and gay, she doesn't get any more respect because she's Black and gay. She is still a capitalist. She is the Black gay face of the empire, just like Pete Buttigieg is the white gay face of the empire.
Say it again for the people in the back.
Kamala Harris is the Black and Indian and whatever, but you notice that they're not playing up on that Indian stuff a lot too much, that's a whole nother conversation. But she's supposed to be the model for Black women. Oh yeah, we're supposed to aspire to that. Why? How? So no, we do not need to be. As a Black woman, I feel it is my job, as someone who is clear that the class struggle needs to be brutal. It is my job to not only be critical of these people, but to be outright hostile toward them.
I like class warfare more than class struggle.
I agree. I think I do too. No, it's not. I don't want to be just critical of them. I'm hostile toward them because they're hostile toward us. So I don't owe them any solidarity because they look like me, or oh please, come on. They don't have a problem supporting policies that make life harder for people who look like them. So, screw them back.
I love it.
I think where it's ridiculous on its face is are we to assume that the Chicago Teachers Union is just full of white dudes, white men? Is that, am I supposed to believe that?
It was wild because, Marcus, when we covered the story on By Any Means Necessary, and we had Nick Stender on, who's a teacher in Chicago and a member of Reds and Ed. And, Nick is a white guy, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of those teachers are Black, are women, and they are looking out, they are sincerely concerned for the health and safety of those students. And I knew that was true when I realized that the teachers won't even ask them for no money. You feel
test, PPE, an actual fucking break if they get sick, a nurse. Could you believe? Imagine the audacity of asking for a nurse in a school full of hundreds of people during a pandemic.
And what did Black LGBTQIA Lori Lightfoot say? Hell no. That's what she said. So I don't owe her any more respect because of any of her physical attributes. Her ideological attributes are antithetical to my existence. So no, I'm hostile toward her. And we should be. You don't get any more respect because you're Black. Just because you're Black. Oh no.
This has been so wonderful. I'm so glad we had this time together.
I'm sad that we couldn't talk more about music, and that Jason couldn't be on because
well,
Jason did message me.
Like this is the only time you're going to be on the show, yes. And we won't be inviting you back on a plethora of Saturdays.
Okay, I just want to make sure because I mean, some folks in y'all's chat, I'm not their friend, so.
Oh, it's okay. Listen, we got a snarky chat, and they always want to fight back and bite back. It's okay. Listen, we're open to divergent views at This Is Revolution podcast. So we would definitely. First of all, I want to thank you for coming out from your busy schedule, Jacqueline Luqman. I've been a long-term admirer of your work, and we will be inviting you back to come and share our Saturday crew commentary more often with varying guests. I really appreciate your presence. But please tell our audience where they can find your work, where they can find you, and where to support your endeavors.
So I am kind of all over the place. You can support Luqman Nation on patreon.com, Luqman Nation. But you can find me 5 days a week from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern time on By Any Means Necessary on Radio Sputnik with Sean the Voice Blackman. Amazing brother and comrade. You can tune into that on SputnikNews.com. You could also check out the podcasts on Spreaker and iTunes and all that kind of stuff everywhere where there's a podcast. You can find me on Fridays at 7 p.m. On Luqman Nation, my show that airs on Black Power Media. Where I do shows on all kinds of stuff, and also the Black Power Media morning show, remix morning show from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. most mornings, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Let's see, where else? Luqman Nation 1 on Twitter, Luqman Nation 1 on Instagram. More pictures of Brewski there than anything else, the dog. And Luqman Nation on Facebook also. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's everything.
Well, Marcus, you want to add anything?
Jason did message me and said that he definitely wants to have you back on, and said Bad Brains is one of his favorite bands as well. So he said, sorry he couldn't make it. Yeah, like we could have had the right winger in the car video, but it was just kind of crapping out. But next time for sure.
Cool. Talk about Bad Brains all day. I'm going to go play some right now.
Well, listen, Jacqueline, thank you so much for coming on. We're going to check your emails and your texts because we're going to be inviting you on because you might be that extra balance, that kind of fifth, fourth of nature that we need to really rock the boat a little bit in terms of this left/progressive politics out there. And I will be emailing this link out to my email list, and all the folks at Black Power Media will be getting it soon. And as well as Black Alliance for Peace, because we are both members of that list server as well. And I want to thank you for coming on, and thank you for the chat. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll be looking to have Jacqueline on more again. And on that note, we are out.